back in Chicago, and one of the points I want to make is that normally I say we have card-carrying Republicans and card-carrying Democrats. I'm not so sure we have any real card carriers here tonight because they're cross-pollinating some of their ideas, which is a good idea, and that's how I think we can solve some problems. We're going to go to call. Let's go to David listening in San Francisco. He's been on a long time. Go ahead, David. I understand you're listening to us on YouTube tonight, or watching us on YouTube.
Yeah, and thanks, Bruce, and your guest. You know, it's interesting. I saw this editorial. There's a magazine online called Facing South. So it's one of these Southern Heritage kind of websites. And the editorial actually shows how the citizenship question on the census would screw the South out of a minimum of 5 congressional seats, 2 in Texas, 2 in Georgia, and 1 in Alabama, and then prospectively a few more in other states in the South. So by asking the citizenship question, the people, like they say, cutting off their nose to spite their face. So I think it's facingsouth.org, and you can see this editorial about it. But I mentioned this before on your show that I believe that Trump's motivations are not, honorable by any means. The guy is a real estate broker, and he knows that if he cuts off the border at planting time, then a whole bunch of farmers and ranchers won't get their crops in. If he cuts off the border at harvest time, they're not going to get their crops out. And so that's going to set it up so that a lot of farmers and ranchers are going to lose their land. Now, what's even worse this year is we've got flooding from Montana all the way over to Ohio, and or Pennsylvania even. And so the floods require a whole lot of hired help, and hired help needed quick, and he's shutting down the border. So Trump is setting it up so that he and his land grab buddies are going to be able to buy a lot of property at tax auction this year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, does anybody agree with that assessment? You've made the point. I don't know whether I can agree with that or not. My point would be is I think Donald Trump's got a lot going on. I'm not so sure he has a lot of time to deal with his real estate buddies to try to bring more money to him. Maybe that's naive on my part, but again, thank you for your call.
And I think his focus more is on being commander-in-chief, and as president, you're supposed to secure the nation's border, and I think that he's approaching it from that matter of thinking.
When the president first started to speak about illegal immigration, it's a national security issue. And then the MS-13 gang is coming. In other words, he gave 3 or 4 reasons as to why he wanted to crack down. Do you think he has delivered on making his case to the American people that there may be a national security issue that is being disregarded by the Democrats and disregarded by the media? In your view?
Well, let me say this. There's no data that we can point to that dictates the fact that the illegal immigration crisis is a national threat here, for the United States. We've had more domestic terrorism than we've had anything else in the United States. So I disagree with the president saying that the illegal immigrant might be a security threat based on the fact we have no evidence to back it up.
Is it a security threat if they are involved in the drug traffic to which the president alleges? I don't think anybody.
Not 95% of heroin is coming from Mexico. Yeah. So it's not an allegation. It's
so that's what I'm just saying is that can we look at the drug problem in America
and human trafficking
and say that that's a national security issue, Max?
Absolutely, and just the numbers back that up. And I think Trump came at it from the other side where I think the people were thinking that before. He said what the people were thinking. And both sides just kind of kicked the issue under the can for decades.
But you have to go all the way back to President Nixon's failed war on drugs. The thing is, the national security threat has been here for over 40, 50 years with the drug trade.
Right.
Now, I understand we need to close the borders. I agree with that because drugs are coming across the border without a doubt in high volume. It's been that way for way too long. So a national security threat, I don't see it. It's just the United States government, the DEA, should do a better job at intercepting the illegal flow of drugs coming to the United States.
And
in the black community in particular.
What about the demand? The demand is in the black community. The demand is in the white community. If the drug demand, you know,
And human trafficking demand, where does that come from?
But drug addiction is a disease.
David,
It's a disease,
I know it is.
you know, right.
But again, we can't deny that isn't part of this bigger, broader picture.
Understood.
Yeah, I think
David.
you know, I think closing the border is going to hit the black markets really hard because you've got a porous border where there is human trafficking. If anything, it emboldens human trafficking. We had a caller say that there was a bus full of people from the Congo crossing the border into San Antonio. We've got a lot of drug trade that goes through there. We've got billionaire drug kings on the other side of the border. You know, I would say that is a national security issue.
$4.2 billion a year.
Jillian?
Well, and I know we see it in our own communities that there's a growing demand for drugs coming across the border, and the demand is strong. And so it's another part of the equation that needs to be solved, and there may be legislation or resources that can be sent to deal with the problem, but I think it also needs to, we need to deal with the border and make sure that we're creating legislation. Congress is identifying that it's a problem and that solutions are being created to handle it.
When Britain wanted to take over China, they sent in opium. They didn't send in troops. So it is a national security issue.
Do we need a Marshall Plan for Central America and for Central America?
We talk about war against Syria. I would love a war against the cartels. Some sort of.
Who wants a war against the cartel?
I think that there could be a way to do it without entering into war. So there's things that you can do on our home front to hopefully help people who are addicted to the drugs that are coming across the border. There's legislation that can be passed to impact that.
Well,
I'm
also-
sorry, David, go ahead.
Well, Bruce mentioned Marshall Plan, and we're rebuilding other countries. And my thing is, you know, we've had an immigration issue here for 30, 40 years. We've also had a demand for that labor as well on this side of this side of the border. And you know, our policy has been outsourcing to China across the ocean, and you know, we've got Latin America in our own backyard. And I would honestly prefer that. If we're outsourcing, it is in our backyard, because you know, if we provide the people in those countries the opportunity to provide for themselves economically and allow those economies to progress and mature, we would. There's been a slowdown actually in migration back into immigration into the U.S. because there are more economic opportunities in Mexico or Latin America. And I think we should. You know, that is our backyard. We should tend to it, and you know. I think the policy should be in trying to rebuild those countries and provide them.
Who believes that? Max?
I believe that. That was my big complaint with NAFTA that a lot of people echoed on both sides, that we did nothing to increase the labor standards of the countries that we traded with, despite our purchasing power, which is the largest in the world.
Would the public buy giving more support to Nicaragua, or would Democrats complain about it and say, why aren't you giving that to the inner cities of Chicago?
More than Syria.
Well, I think the Democrats might complain, but the Democrats have been complaining for 30 years too about the same issues, because the thing is, nothing has really changed for poor people in the inner cities throughout the United States. Detroit, Memphis, St. Louis. St. Louis is #1 for gun violence right now. People don't know that. The Chicago southeast and west side of Chicago, no community development over the last 30 years. East St. Louis, downstate, no community development downtown East St. Louis over the last 50 years.
Yeah, East
I'm
St. Louis
Bruce
has higher.
DuMont, back shortly from Chicago.
I do.
Bruce DuMont back in Chicago, and let's go to Austin, Texas again. KLBJ is a busy place for us tonight. Go ahead. You're on the air, Timothy.
Is that right? Timothy Ibbotson here. Hey, it's been a really interesting conversation y'all have had.
Thank you.
I will say that. Am I coming through?
Yes,
Really?
you are. Go ahead.
Well, at the end, we were talking about whether or not we should do some sort of Marshall Plan to Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
And the comments on that were kind of, I don't know, not very detailed. So I wanted to comment on that and then see what people thought about it. But most importantly, I just think it's wonderful that this conversation is happening. I think it's good. New group of people. I don't listen to the radio very often. I just had to comment.
Well, thank
So
you.
here's the thing. the thing nobody wants to really be honest about on any level, from any side, whether it's Republican or Democrat, and it seems like a lot of the people on this panel are kind of in the middle. They're independent thinkers, and that's really important because we've been complicit in a lot of the problems throughout the world, but we also are part of the solution. That's what America is, and it's a promise that we give to people that they can be free here to create their own life, and that is what attracts people to come. And then people are struggling in different places, but be it Africa or the Middle East or Mexico or Honduras or Venezuela these days and things like that. None of these people would come here if there were better opportunities in their own country. However, we also know that we can't just give them things and then they turn into Venezuela. So when you think about Marshall Plan, you think about giving people basic necessities so they can sustain life, and it was a great moment in American history. But they rebuilt their own country. We just kind of helped them through a really difficult patch.
Right.
The problems we have in Latin America are much larger than that. They're much more systemic. You know, you might call it corruption. You know, corruption in government, and also corrupts the spirit of people. And the mechanism by which this happens really is money coming through illicit sources in the black market, illegal. Billions of dollars of drug trafficking and stuff like that. And, you know, our government hasn't been honest about our history involved in that. We also aren't honest about the reality that if that doesn't stop, there is going to not be a lot of opportunity for people to clean up their own government. We've also been complicit in destabilizing Central American countries that weren't necessarily communist or socialist, but they just weren't really siding with our foreign policy at the time, and a lot of that happened in the 80s and 70s and 80s. So,
Tim, what do you think? Tim, I want to kind of telescope your comment.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think we do now? Let's focus on the three triangle countries. What do you think we should do? The president has said he wants to cut off foreign aid, and that riled up the Democrats. And a lot of people said, even Republicans said, "Why are you doing that now? What are you leaving in its place to try to keep people in those countries?" Because the other argument that the Trump administration has made, and there are others that agree with that, and that is the money that's been going there is going to corrupt governments. It's beefing up corrupt governments. So if we don't want money to go to corrupt governments, how do we funnel the money to institutions within those countries that will make their populace smarter, more educated, more driven, more opportunities for economic development? How does that happen if you don't have the government involved? I'm going to ask David Herrera, who's with us, then we'll go back to you to sort of weigh in on that particular thought. If you don't want to go through the government, who do you go through?
That's the problem. We have the corrupt officials in a lot of these countries, and they pocket the money, and we get nothing. It's a blank check. So I think what we need to do is take a more nation-building approach, and maybe we send over, we broker a deal where, you know, we could send over a few, maybe the Fortune 500 companies should start looking at expansion plans, and hey, this is part of this Latin American Marshall Plan, and we're going to invest here, but it's going to be an American-style private sector capitalistic approach where it's versus here's just a check and we good luck, and you know we've been doing that for 50 years. It hasn't worked.
I had to interrupt, but like Chiquita Bananas when they were in
David,
Chile when they had a private.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Chiquita Banana where they had a private mercenary.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
You came to me with the question originally, and then you went to your panelists, which I think is great. And David, thanks for your thought. But here's the thing, David. I agree with you. Don't go through the government, and don't be writing blank checks through a Marshall Plan for Latin America through corrupt resources. However, the solution is also not to go to the Fortune 500. You might call that capitalism, but it's not capitalism. It's a crony capitalism. That's like the Chiquita Banana, or somebody else say Chiquita Banana. This has been like a big problem. So really, it's about the spirit of people, right? And the way we stop it is we stop attracting magnets to our own country, which is we get our employers on board with not hiring illegal immigrants. We stop the magnet of people coming here. And at the same time, we also have to deal with the issue of all the money that we're creating by consuming all this illicit drug activity, right? you're not going to stop people from doing drugs, but we already know 100 years ago that prohibition doesn't work. So when you regulate those industries, people stop killing people. They make a lot less money. People don't overdose as often. And then maybe in 5, 10, 15 years, certain countries are going to do better off because they're going to clean up their own mess. And then the people can just stay there because they don't want to come here. They'd rather stay in their own countries and have jobs and have families.
So I just wanted to
David,
rebuttal a little bit here. So yeah, the government model hasn't worked, right? The Fortune 500 was just an example, but a lot of these countries need infrastructure, roads and bridges, and so you need some sort of private contractor to go down there. It doesn't have to be a Fortune 5, but
David,
a small
I hear
business
you on that,
can't do that. Small
we've
business
all
owners aren't
heard-
able to do that.
But here's the thing, David, is I would assume most people listening to this throughout the country are aware of all the times we've given money to foreign countries to finance infrastructure projects. Confessions of an economic hitman. You put these countries into a significant amount of debt, then you have to come back and get them to vote with you or do whatever they want to do to destabilize their country and let their leadership, who prospers, and rich people in those countries prosper. The issue isn't bridges in Mexico. That's not the problem. It's a country of a ton of resources and wonderful people. They don't need more bridges.
Yeah. Let me say this. I don't feel there should be no Marshall Plan for Central America unless we have a serious crackdown on the illegal drug trade. You have to give something in order to get something. The governments of Mexico, any Central American governments, there should be a coordinated effort with the United States, DEA, to make sure we have a serious crackdown on the illegal drug trade. Then we present a Marshall Plan.
You don't think it's serious now?
No, it's more than serious now. It's at a level now that is totally unacceptable, but it's been around for over 40 years. That's the point I'm making.
Right.
So no Marshall Plan without a serious crackdown to stop the illegal flow of drugs.
I just have one last
Go
comment
ahead.
because we did rebuild. We rebuilt Japan after we hit it with 2 nuclear bombs. We rebuilt Western Europe, so it worked back then. And we've got to tweak the model and try to reapply it somewhere. If we have these issues from coming south of the border.
Timothy, thank you for your call. Go ahead, make a point.
I know I've been talking about how I really think that Congress needs to act and make legislation, but there's also things that personal citizens can do. I know that there's projects through Unbound or Kiva you can make with new technology, new direct microloans to people in those countries. And so there might be ways to do it through that kind of person to person from United States citizens to that Central American area instead of always depending on the government to solve our problems.
Okay. One quick question. Should there be a place in the United States, I don't know where it would be, should there be a place in the United States where refugees, those that are seeking asylum, and they've been granted asylum, should there be a place where they go to live and to prosper? Should there be a new community somewhere in this country that is made up of people that are coming from that part of the world?
Well, I think clearly I was in a much different situation when I went to a different country to live, but part of the beauty of living in a different country is learning about that country and being with its people and integrating yourself into the community. And so by establishing just like one zone in the country for people to live, I think that would completely defeat the purpose of having people come and enjoy the wonderful freedoms we all share. It would kind of be restricting a certain class of people to a certain area of the country. I don't think I would be in favor of it.
Do you think if someone is fleeing, if they are fleeing Nicaragua because they fear for their children's lives because there's gangs and there's violence and there's corruption, if you send that person and you relocate them to the south or west side of Chicago, where we have 50, 60 people shot every weekend, is that really a better life for them?
Well, your solution sounds kind of like, it sounds great in theory, but in practice sounds more like a Skid Row, Escape from New York type situation. Like, I don't think it's good to concentrate people in any way like that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying
There shouldn't be a zone.
Yeah, there shouldn't be
Bruce. I think they should assimilate in the overall society. I mean, no matter what they may end up going to Joliet, Aurora. They could go to some parts of Austin, Texas.
Wyoming.
Wyoming, Montana. There shouldn't be no separation. No, I just don't think there should be, especially if they've been granted asylum over here.
Okay. Judah, we go to you in Chicago, listening to us on YouTube. Go ahead. Judah, are you there? Line 2. Let's go to Catherine on line
that you
4.
weren't able to win, but
Okay, go ahead.
my question is to you, Max, and to your panel is that, you know, in the last debate, every single nominee or, you know, the person in the debate raised their hand that they were for granting illegal aliens free health care. And I mean, for me, I like free health care for
Yeah,
me
same.
and my family. I just don't understand it, and I wanted to.
By the way, they did not say free health care. They said health care.
Just that image in itself,
They
though,
did not
kind
say,
of.
yeah, I refer to that picture as the Trump reelection photo op.
Yeah.
I'm Bruce DuMont, back shortly.
Their quality of life there.
Bruce DuMont back in Chicago. Nice to have you with us this evening. And if today NBC Wall Street Journal came out with a new poll, they released it on Meet the Press today. This is for the Democratic nomination, and Joe Biden continues in first place, according to their poll, at 26%. Elizabeth Warren has moved into second place at 19%. Kamala Harris has moved up to third at 13%. She is now tied with Bernie Sanders, who has dropped to that number 4 position. And Pete Buttigieg is at 7%. And if you drop down below that, the only people that are below that is Beto O'Rourke is at 2%, and Andrew Yang is at 2%. But all the other people that have been running for a long time, they're getting no traction at all. So at the moment, it looks like Biden, at the moment, is leading the race. However, the big political news last week was a kind of a spit spat between, or a spit take between the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, in which Speaker Pelosi referred to them as a squad, referring to AOC and 3 other members, more controversial members of the left wing, the new class of this year, that she is referred to as a squad, basically saying they're getting a lot of publicity. They've got great Twitter followers, but their opposition doesn't amount to many votes. In fact, she specifically was critical of AOC and this squad of 4 left of center Democrats, because they voted against the $4 billion plus package to help out those immigrants on the border. These were the same 4 people who went to the detention centers, who decried the conditions at the detention centers, who opened their mouths, got all kinds of publicity, sent all the tweets out to talk about the problem. But again, when it came time to vote for $4 billion to help those people out, they voted no. So again, you've got battles between the Speaker of the House and the young firebrands of the Democratic Party. David, you said you're a Reagan Democrat, so I think I know the answer to this question. But you have 4 squeaky wheels, and in the media world, the squeaky wheels, which is AOC and the squad, they get all the publicity. Are they leading the party? And is Nancy Pelosi, is she just being preserved as an old white liberal from San Francisco?
You know, I don't think they're not helping their party out. They're moving so far to the left that I honestly think they're going to lose the Midwest in the general. So it's going to come down to, there's a lot of people that are center of the aisle like myself who want what's best for the country, right? And you know, anytime you start going too far to any extreme, people get a wake-up call and they're like, you know what, yeah, I'm not really going to buy into that. So that's great for them in local politics, and if that's what is going to get AOC elected and Nancy Pelosi, you know, that, you know, they live in that realm. But nationally, I think it's actually going to hurt the Democratic Party.
Theo, what do you think as a Democrat? Is this a good battle? I mean, you know, in every generation, there's the old guard, and then there's the young guard. The young guard always wants a faster track. They want things better and quicker. In this particular case, you have 4 of the most left members of Congress They get a lot of publicity. They're reaching out to the millennials. They've got the following. They've got the ear of the media. And are they in a position, in your view, to change the complexion and the future of the Democratic Party? Because there's no African Americans in this list.
There's one, Presley.
Presley, I'm
Right,
sorry.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
You know, I believe when it comes down to the millennials, you have some the younger people. It's time for younger people to take office here. You have 435 congressional seats up in 2020. You have, I think, around 50 U.S. Senate seats up, and it's time for a major change, major shift here in America, because the old-time politicians. Look at Mitch McConnell. You know the way he's talking. You know, look at some of these people that have been around for over 40 years.
Bobby Rush.
Bobby Rush, without a doubt. It's time to put a rush
Danny
on Bobby
Davis.
Rush. Danny Davis. Yes, and, I have one of the best Danny Davis voices in the world. Hey, I'm Congressman Danny Davis. You know, I grew up in Arkansas. You know, I mean, I'm just being honest with you. But the point I make, it's time for some new faces to come to this, come on the scene on the congressional level, and all that was because the
So
reality.
are they rightfully getting the publicity that they deserve? I mean, they're pushing the party, and although not much has been happening in Congress, if you listen to the Democratic presidential candidates, they seem to be following the script of the 4 young members of the squad.
Well, they have no choice but to follow the script of the 4 younger members, because right now, all the people that have been around for ages is just not working anymore. See, it's all about money. One thing I learned when I ran for office, if you don't have the money, you should not run.
Is it working for Joe Biden?
Joe Biden he's getting, we'll see how that plays out. The verdict is still out on Joe Biden. I think it's working for him because of his attachments to Barack Obama, to a degree. It's still a Barack Obama, residue hanging out there with Joe Biden, I believe. That's my take on it.
Do you think that he hurt himself by talking about that he used to work with segregationist senators?
It hurt
Is
him
that
quite-
is that viewed as wisdom in the rearview mirror, or is it a profile in courage, or is it just an old man who's reflecting on the past?
Yeah, he's just
What
an
do you
older guy.
think?
No, he's an older guy reflecting on the past, because we all have made decisions when we were younger, and they may come back to bite us sometimes. But the thing is, that doesn't mean that he was on the far left side of that issue, or whatever the case may be, because that was a different era in America at that time. And you even have African American people that believe that segregation was better for African American people than desegregation. Okay, you have African American people that believe that, because we were progressing a lot more during the segregation era in America, in our history.
But are old black voters more reliable voters than millennial black voters?
Old black voters are more reliable voters. It's been
Okay.
proven at the polls. It's been
Yeah,
proven,
four times
But the
is-
millennials are picking up the pace now. But yeah, you're right. Old black voters they vote. Bottom line, they vote for the incumbents. 90% of the time, they vote for the incumbents.
Max, you're a Republican, but again, you're also a political animal. When you look at what's happening in the Democratic field, are you is this just more of a circular firing squad that they've?
Well, I mean, everyone's kind of touched on it.
Created?
It kind of was created by Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden, who did nothing for so long. And I think the whole debate is just crazy that he was in the Senate 40 years ago. Like, that in itself is bad, just from a people's perception, that he was a senator in 1975. And no, yeah, they're crazy, and it's great.
What does it do that with all of his background, however?
Yeah.
He was selected by Barack Obama to be his running mate. He could have selected
As a
anybody.
compromise. I mean, Abraham Lincoln selected Andrew Johnson.
No, but
that was
I don't want to go. I don't know the politics of that.
Yeah.
But again, the fact is, he picked Joe Biden. What does that not give him some unique credibility?
Oh, absolutely. It kind of gives him a huge advantage, but he's proven time and time again that he's not a good politician. Like, he's lost 3 primaries before.
What do you think?
And he's really slipped too.
He's been around a long time. He was out front on civil rights issues when Kamala Harris was in grade school, right?
Right.
And
But this-
now, does an old white guy get credit for doing that, or is he just yesterday's news now?
I believe he's yesterday's news based on the fact that, yeah, he's old, he's been around, but what has he brought to the table? My people are still struggling on a higher level here across the United States. If you look at the disparities that's taking place between black and white, the income, the wealth gap, we're struggling out here. You have different segments of the society. You have middle class African American America, wealthy class African American America. You have poor, absolute poor. I mean, the list goes on and on. But when Bill Clinton passed the crime bill, he was there then. Like a lot of the crime bill. And that
Like
was
a
one
lot of
the worst bills.
Democrats.
And I think the
Like
arrogance
the
is
Black
really, yeah.
Caucus.
Like the Black Caucus. Right now,
Absolutely.
Bobby Rush saying he regrets signing off on that bill. But the point is this: Biden has been around while all those things were going on here in our country. So it's time for new people, new blood. That's all I'm saying. Get some new blood, and they can be consultants to some of the new blood and talk about where they went wrong and help these young people not
David?
go wrong.
Well, there's a whole anti-establishment undertone nationwide. I mean, look, Lori Lightfoot won Chicago against Tony Preckwinkle, who was
Yep.
the machine candidate. So it was on the Republican side and on the Democratic side. We had Bernie, we had all that, and I don't think that they learned they're going to put up another establishment Joe Biden up there. Yeah.
Now,
One
one
of my
the things that
favorite
Joe-
comedians, Eddie Murphy, has a stand-up joke where he said, "What have you done for me lately?" And what has Nancy Pelosi or Joe Biden done for
Well,
any of us lately? He says he's going to cure cancer, but
everybody
cancer's
asks
still around.
that question. My question,
Yeah.
well, she would argue that Obamacare was that
really,
she
is anyone
delivered
like in their
Obamacare.
health insurance listening right now
Yeah,
or at
right.
this table?
My question to you is: you have been very critical of the role of the increasing role that gays and lesbians have in the Democratic Party.
Well, I've
You
talked
came
about
up with
it.
a recent post on it. You took a
Yes.
lot of heat from it.
I took a lot of heat on. Let me be clear with all the people that are viewing your show Beyond the Beltway. I'm glad to be on this show. I was raised that a man should be with a woman. I'm talking about me.
Yeah.
That doesn't make me anti anything that you are. I want to make that clear. I'm not homophobic. I support all human beings. I just believe that with the LGBT community, what happens, this is a sensitive topic. What happens is that everybody, we should all just be Americans. There shouldn't be no separation. We should just all be Americans. Right now, you have over about 40 different flags for the LGBTQ community, and they're gaining more political power each and every day. And that's okay. I have no problem with that. But nobody's going to speak this way because people are scared to talk about this issue. I have gay friends. They know where I stand. I'm not anti-gay. I was just raised that a man should be with a woman. I want to just make that crystal clear. That doesn't mean I'm against anybody. I just have to say it this way because I'm passionate about it. But the reality is this. I'm proud of all the advancement that the gay community is making, without a doubt. But it's all political, once again. It's political. Right now, it's more like a political base that they're developing now. That's going to be stronger than any other political base in Chicago for a long time to come.
Are they flexing their muscle now more effectively and efficiently than the black community?
That's my point. Yes, they are. And then a lot of people hijack the Black Power movement for their own progress and for their own issues. I see that happening all the time.
We're going to pause. 1-800-723-8029. One more segment. Then we'll be back.
Well,
Thanks.
Hope that
I'm glad that you said that, not me. It was the first time for everything, though.
But you're a cool guy. Thank you.
Bruce, back in Chicago. Thanks very much for joining us. Let's go to Kathleen. She's listening to us on WCGO, our flagship station in Chicago, Illinois. Go ahead, Kathleen. Are you there? Kathleen. Catherine, where is she? She's gone. She's gone with the wind. I want to come back and talk with you, Jillian, a little bit about what you have been involved in, because you early in the program you painted yourself in your answer to a question as someone who's very concerned about illegal immigrants and treating them properly. And my question to you is, as a young Republican, what advice would you give to the president to clean up his act in regards to how he speaks about the immigrant community?
So there's things I like about our president, and there are things I don't like. I do like his tax cut legislation. I do like that the employment's low across board. I do like that he's pursuing things like criminal justice reform. Sometimes he sent out a tweet today, in fact, that was probably didn't need to be said, and so I
Which
think
one?
that it was
Go
towards the I guess we're calling them the squad of four now, so
Yeah.
towards the congresswomen, and so it wasn't something that needed to be said. I think he expresses his frustration that way, and it speaks to his base, but it doesn't always communicate what he's really good at to the rest of the nation and to people who are going to vote for him in the upcoming election cycle. And so I think that you know what? That's how he communicates. That I'm not certain I can say anything to change the way he's going to communicate.
Do you think that most people support the idea of ICE going out and seeking out those 2,000 people who are in violation of their deportation order, and believe that the president is doing the right thing by rounding those people up and sending them back to their countries? Do you think that's the popular position in the country? I want to get everybody's reaction to that.
I think that the people across our country aren't able to see that because of the way the media portrays it. So it seems to people who might just idly be watching television that they're rounding up women and children. These are 2,000, a very small percentage of the illegal aliens
Right.
in our country that they are going after, who have gone through due process, who have been before a judge, who just didn't show up to be deported. And so they have a deportation order. And from what we've heard from the administration, they're going after those that are criminal or who have entered multiple times.
Do you think
So-
that's a popular position, Max?
I think the popular position is they want the deportation, but they don't want to see the actual process of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Theo?
I think the law is the law. You know, the law must be abided by based on the
So
fact
they
that-
want to see it enforced, but in the middle of the night. They don't want a lot of
No, I just think,
pictures.
like I said earlier, it's about education. I think the face of illegal immigrants is mainly people from Latin, Central America, Mexico, whatever the case. If people don't have the facts in front of them, I think people need to be educated. They're going after 2,000 people that had that had their papers, but they could
Right.
not stay here. Okay, that's what needs to be. People need to be educated about that. That's all I can say about it.
David?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Does the general
Yeah.
public support this idea, in your view?
well, I don't think they understand exactly who's being targeted, which are the criminals. They're the first ones to get out. If you broke our laws, you're here undocumented.
What
Didn't-
role
I think-
what role is the media playing? I mean, I'm thinking,
Terrible
the media's role in falsely creating images really bothers me. I mean, the idea of seeing firsthand, and this is what I do support. If there's a media story that's going to show me conditions at the detention centers that have 400 or 500 people in a cage, first of all, I hate when they say caged. Well, I mean, if you're being detained, you're in a cell or you're caged. That's what happens. That's what you do.
Yes,
Also
the media
the
should be
word-
more like C-SPAN and less like Jerry Springer. is my
Yes.
only-
Also the word
They should-
raids, because these are
Raids.
going in and targeting specific people. These aren't going into companies and taking out all of their
Right.
employees.
It's aggressive law enforcement. But the word raids has and again, if you arrest a woman or a child, then that becomes the photo, and people react to the photo.
And you also, going to your point, Bruce, we saw, I think, our Vice President Pence, he usually
Yes.
doesn't get too aggressive on Twitter, but he was pretty upset with CNN and their coverage of his trip to the border, where
Right.
you just saw that. He originally visited a home for mothers with
Right.
children.
Right.
And it was a comfortable place, and everything looked well kept, and he talked with people there, and they said that they were cared for. And then he went to a detainee facility
Right.
for all young men, and it was very different. They were behind the iron or the chain link fence
Mm-hmm.
and everything, and that was the only thing that someone like CNN showed. And so you have to have both sides of the story, and the media obviously can offer that. They just aren't.
Fox News too. And I
Go
was
ahead.
on Fox News, and my whole experience was they literally, for a whole week, gave me a script of exactly what to say. And obviously, I went off script, and you could look it up on YouTube.
Like what? What did they tell you to say?
I was supposed to be an Obama supporter that switched my vote to Mitt Romney in the 2012 election.
Yeah.
But if they would have done some research, I was too young to vote in the 2008 election.
Oh.
So it's not even humanly possible. And for a whole week, they just gave me talking points. Now, here's what you're gonna say: you're now you're living back at home, and you got tired of the hope and change, and now you're switching to Romney, and none of that was the truth. And so Fox News is guilty. I'm sure CNN is guilty too.
Because
And it's a shame.
they're speaking to their audience.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
trying to create
demographically
ratings.
defined. I mean, as I've said before, I think what happened when the last election took place, I think the network executive said, okay, are we going to be for the electoral college population, or are we going to be for the popular vote? And I think they divvied them up. And I think the left of center news operation said we're going to go for the popular vote, and the others are going for the electoral college vote.
Well, I'd
And that
love to
was the
see
mistake.
people cover news
Yeah,
instead
it
of
would-
give
it would be
opinions
good.
on news.
We love talking about, like, immigration's a real issue, but they spent, I think MSNBC spent 80% of their airtime talking about Russia for
Sure,
3
right,
months.
absolutely. Max Rice,
Yes.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Jillian, we thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you
Bernice,
very much,
Jillian
yes.
Bernice, and Teal Hardiman, and David Herrera. We thank you all for joining us for this portion of our program. We are gone until next week. I want to thanks to our friends Fritz Goldman and David. We thank you very much running the boards this week. David Marshall. I'm Bruce DuMont. Good night from Chicago.
Hi, I'm Ryan